Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Highways and Transport Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which is taking place in the Sparkano Committee Room at County Hall. Some of the officers will be joining online via Microsoft Teams. This meeting is being webcast live to the public on YouTube. Please turn your microphones on when you are speaking and turn off when you are finished. In addition to the committee members, we also have in attendance the Cabinet Lead Member for Highways and Transport, and welcome Mr. Ozzy O'Shea. If we'd just like to make some introductions, starting with Max, if you wouldn't mind, Max.
Loughborough Northwest. Richard Allen, Hinckley and Barsworth.
Craig Smith, Colville North.
Les Fillmore, Cosby and County Sort Division.
Yeah. Brian Lovegrove, Beaver Division.
And Tony Gillard, Whittick Division.
Ozzy O'Shea, Cabinet Member and Member for Ratby, Groby and Field End.
And last but not least,
Anne Crothers, Director for Environment and Transport.
Thank you very much for that. Moving on to item 1, minutes of the meeting held on 4th of November 2021. I propose that the minutes of the meeting held on the 4th of November 21 are taken as read and agreed. So, thank you. Question time. Item 2, we have received one question from the public. Questions have been submitted by Mr. Jason Blake regarding recording road defects. Mr. Blake has been provided with an answer, and the answers have been circulated to members and published on the website. So welcome, Mr. Blake. I believe you have a supplementary question, so I'll invite you to join us now.
Yep, hello. Okay, yeah, so I received the answer to the question. Ahead of that question, I did provide context and detail. Unfortunately, it isn't answered. And it's about the requirement to be clear and concise in regard to road defects to the public for safety and council accountability. And to note, I have requested such information directly with the highways and via FOI, and only highway annual inspection reports or public reports are available. So my supplementary question is, what about those potholes that are identified and marked up as Category 1 repair that fall outside of highway annual inspections or a public report? Example, they're found either during a spot check or upon a road visit relating to a different issue. Why are they not recorded in a way that is monitored and available to the public?
I'll now ask Anne Crothers if she could answer that question for you.
Thank you, Chair. The short answer is they are recorded. It doesn't matter whether the Cat 1 defect has been raised either through a public inquiry, i.e. a member of the public has put it in to us, that then gets recorded in our own system or HMS system, and that is then assessed. And if it's assessed as a Cat 1, that will be acted on appropriately, or if it's come up via our inspections, our routine inspections. Now it's annual if it's a lower category road, an unclassified rural road. Our busier A-class roads are monthly. We have different hierarchies for that. The short answer is they are recorded. As I say, it comes out of inspections from the inspector, and that would be recorded through his reports. Or if it comes in via the public, we have a highway management system called Confirm. It gets recorded on that. The assessment is then updated and recorded, and the action and the ticket for works is also recorded in a different part of the system. We do have these records. We have substantial numbers of them. As you can imagine, across the county, we have over 2,500 miles of road. And, with reducing funding pots from government for maintenance, we've got an ever increasing challenge to keep those roads maintained adequately. And as, again, publicly available, our stats show, in terms of the percentage of road requiring repair, structural repair, that is increasing year on year, showing that basically the funding we have available from government isn't sufficient to do the job. We're in no different position from any other highway authority in the country, but those stats are available as well. So hopefully that's answered the question. We do record them, and there are mechanisms in which the public can look to see, hold us accountable for the condition of the road. And one other thing I would just mention is the National Highways and Transport Survey that happens every year. We take part in that, and it is a comparison where through that we're able to make comparisons with our comparator authorities, which are namely counties. And with that, for the whole time I have been with this authority, 6 years, we've been either first or second in terms of the satisfaction with the condition of our network. That's not to say we don't have ongoing challenges with maintaining it, but again, it's another means for which the public can hold us accountable for our performance in highways maintenance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Anne. I hope that answers your question, Mr. Blake. As I say, you had only allowed one supplementary question, so thank you for that question, and we'll move on with item 3 on the agenda. So item 3 is questions asked by members under Standing Order 7.3 and 7.5. We have received 8 questions from Mr. Max Hunt in relation to highways assets. Mr. Hunt has been provided with the answers, and the answers have been circulated to members and published on the website. Mr. Hunt, do you wish to ask any supplementary questions?
No, the supplementary questions are on record, and I thank the officers for the answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Max. And moving on then to item 4, to advise of any other items which the chairman has decided to take as urgent elsewhere on the agenda. There are no urgent items. Declarations of interest in respect of items on the agenda. Do any members have any interest to declare? Les.
Thank you, Chair. So it will be agenda item 8 and matters relating to special educational needs and disabilities. It is a personal interest as my wife is a county employee who works in that arena. Thank you.
Any others? Thank you, Les. Declarations of party whip in accordance with overview and scrutiny procedure rule 16. This is item 6. Are there any declarations of the party whip? No. Thank you. Item 7. Presentation of petitions under Standing Order 35. I have not received any petitions. So now moving on to item 8. Our first main item is the medium-term financial strategy 2022-23 to 2025-26. On pages 9 to 16 of your agenda pack, a separate sheet has been circulated which sets out the consideration of the MTFS. Is going to be broken down into sections, so please ask your questions under the current section. Firstly, I'm going to ask Ozzy O'Shea to introduce the report, and I'd just like to remind members, as page 9 of your agenda pack, we're to ask the committee to consider any issues as part of the consultation process and make any recommendations to Scrutiny Commission and the Cabinet accordingly. So, Ozzy and Anne, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to introduce the Highways and Transport Overview Committee to the medium-term financial strategy for our transport. If I hand over now to Anne, who will go through it, and I hope you'll all be enlightened to the actual work that our department, and I'm very proud to say, does. Thank you.
Thank you, Ozzy. Anne?
Thank you very much. Chair, if you'll allow me, I propose I'll take you through the report and then every so often just pause to allow questions because there is quite a lot of information, if that's all right. So as already been said, this is a 4-year financial plan budgeting for the highways and transport services within the Environment and Transport Department. If I take the revenue element first, overall, the highways and transport revenue set out in Table 1 of the report for you, and it shows you that for the coming financial year we've got a revenue budget of 51 million. That rises to 54 million you'll see in the fourth year of the MTFS. These figures include the effects of growth on existing budgets, i.e. where we're needing more money over our previous core budget in the coming years, as well as our savings, so it takes that off, so it's the net effect of that. Breakdown across our high-level service areas are shown in Table 2. However, I suspect that probably isn't hugely meaningful for you, and more detail, the way it's broken down across functions that you will see in Appendix A to the report probably gives you a better idea about, where the proportions of spend are allocated across the highways and transport service. Our gross spend is 65 million. We've got 13 million of contributions and recharges, which takes you to that net budget of 51 million for this coming financial year. I'm happy to take questions on the overall picture of revenue, but we just note that some of the likely areas of interest will be covered when we come into the area of growth, and then some of it in savings. But I particularly think you probably want to drill down into some of those big areas of growth for us. But just in terms of the overall revenue budget set for us, happy to take questions. I'll pause there, Chair.
Thank you, Anne. Is there any questions from colleagues? No?
We'll move on. I'll take that. We'll move on and we'll look at the growth situation then. So basically this reflects where we're seeing increased service pressures, where further spend is required over our previous year's budgets. That summary table you'll see under paragraph 14, you can see that our SEN transport is the biggest growth item we've got across the highway and transport services. I'm sure probably that won't be a surprise to this committee given previous discussions we've had at times. And that starts at, in the coming year, 1.2 million growth over our base budget, which is roughly 13-14 million a year we spend on that, and that rises to 5.1 million in the fourth year. So you see substantial growth in that area. That is based on a forecast of 12% increase in numbers coming into the system. So we've got, an additional 12% in the coming year we're anticipating. That figure comes from work with the Children's and Family Service area, because it's their referrals then that we are providing transport through, comes through their systems. So we work closely with them to understand what the likely growth is going to be. They are forecasting lower growth in future years. However, what we will do is obviously, this is not a static picture. We will keep that under review and we'll keep working with them to look at that. There's also, on top of that, not only have we got the 12% increase in numbers coming through, we are also estimating a 2% increase in cost per individual. The increasing complexity of cases, we risk assess them, and depending on an individual's needs, they might need solo transport and they can't go in transport with another individual, so another person, so that obviously increases costs. They might need an escort, they might need a medically trained escort. All these things add cost into the system. Just for context though, overall in terms of our highways and transport budget, what we spend in SEN transport is, for this coming year, will be roughly 35% of everything we spend across highways and transport. So a third of our budget goes in SEN transport. And what we spend on SEN transport is greater than what we spend in our revenue side of highways maintenance to keep the network going. And you've just heard from, Mr. Blake there, some of the concerns around that. So just to give you that context there and put it in proportion for you. Under the savings element, I'll come on to the work we're doing to try and help manage that level of growth down. We're certainly not just sitting back and accepting that. We are doing a lot of activity, or undertaking a lot of activity to help us manage that. Okay, you'll also see from that table we've got 265,000 allocated across our capital programme and asset management function. This is our major projects, our structural maintenance programmes, our asset management, how we maintain our highways. And that's to strengthen our governance and management around those functions, and particularly looking at things like risk management, cost estimation when it comes to our major projects. It'll also provide additional resource into that asset management approach that I just mentioned. Just moving down the report there from the items under G13 to G17, there's smaller sums across a number of areas there in terms of growth. The only one I think I would highlight for you, hydro-treated vegetable oil, HVO, is much easier to say, I find. That's an initiative that will allow our diesel vehicles in our fleet to run on this HVO. It will significantly reduce the fleet's emissions, and while there's an upfront additional cost, which is what this growth reflects, it has got that positive benefit in terms of reduced use of diesel across our fleet and those carbon emissions reductions as well. So that's just a slightly different one. We don't normally have that, but that's us in terms of improving our services, very much an eye to the green agenda and the carbon reductions targets and commitments we as authority have. So I thought it was worthwhile just pointing that one out. I'll pause there, Chair. It is both. There's an element of maintenance. I mean, fundamentally, we've got our allocations from government, and at the moment they're still indicative because they tend to, they will give us a forward of a few years, but they'll be indicative until the last minute, which is now, because obviously they've just done the local government settlement and the settlement to departments. So DFT are now then finalising what they will allocate out in terms of maintenance allocation. So we've got indicative ones at the moment. And there is a revenue element to it and there is a capital element. So both in the appendices there is the annual amounts we're spending on maintenance across revenue and capital. I mean, the reference to, decreasing amounts, actually DFT have kind of held them very similar for the last 5 or more years. We've had very similar, might go up a few 100,000, down a few 100,000, but it's the same level of millions that we get allocated. But what that means is, over the last a couple of years, we did an assessment, or financial colleagues did an assessment on this, and it actually meant we were getting a significant reduction because of inflation, because obviously our spending power was less. So it in effect equates to reducing the amount we've got there to deliver our maintenance programme under. Sorry, I haven't got the figures right to my head, but they are in the appendices there in terms of, but as I say, they're across 2 areas, the revenue element and the capital element of maintenance.
So the important thing is that it hasn't been dropping as significantly as it was in the past. But we have inflation now to cope with, which is going to mean less out of what we've got.
For the capital element, absolutely. There's, and then every so often we will get things like just ad hoc funding where government will decide to allocate an element of funding for something like pothole funds, which then adds. So, it does tend to fluctuate when we get those ad hoc things as well. But, the core allocations have remained relatively stable. But as I say, the buying power of that is reduced, yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just return to the issue that we raised this morning in the briefing, and that is that the outstanding matter of growth, as Anne has referred to, is of course in the special educational needs transport. And if looking at the looking at the figures in front of us, it goes up by over £1 million every year, and presumably will carry on rising. I think that people who are not involved at all in the system, who'll be interested in what we spend on highways and transportation, would be amazed when if we explain to them that that the outstanding costs for this area of work is in fact in this area of special educational needs. Now, our hearts go out to the youngsters, of course, and the parents and carers who are caught up in this situation. But I think we've come to a point where I think there should be an examination on where these costs should fall. I've actually sent a note to the chairman of the Scrutiny Commission asking this, on your advice, Chairman, asking that this matter is raised at the next Scrutiny Commission meeting. You know, I think there ought to be an in-depth look at where, in fact, these costs should fall. I think we'll all have our own ideas, but it really does dominate the work of this department to a degree which I think is remarkable. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, David. I'm not sure whether Anne can add anything further to that, but you know, as the page 9 of the agenda said, we are here to make recommendations to the Scrutiny Commission, which you clearly have following this morning's briefing. So thank you for that. Anne?
Thank you. I'll move on to the savings then.
Sorry, Chairman, it might just be worth.
If members so wish for David's recommendation to go forward to next Thursday's Commissioners meeting. Yeah, agreed? No problem. Thank you. Noted, Ewan. Sorry, Anne.
Thank you. Savings of the initiatives that we have quantified and are in the process of or will deliver during the MTFS period, the savings start at 1.5 million, rising to 2.2 million, as you can see under paragraph 16 of the report. As you'll also note, though, they're substantially less than the growth the department is experiencing as well. So, you know, an ongoing challenge there. I'll focus on a couple of the larger savings lines for you. We've already mentioned SEN transport. We have got a lean review delivering just over $1 million we are anticipating from that. There's a number of strands of work under this, including working with Newton Europe, who have been in looking at our systems to optimise our transport provision through improved procurement of contracts. Also through working with colleagues in children's service to have earlier sight of the work coming through, because the earlier we can put out to contract, the lower the cost we get. Revised risk assessments is another area of work, and potentially bringing some of the most expensive services back in-house. We are also carrying out a piece of work to review all our own processes to drive efficiencies through that and how we deliver that service. So there are a number of strands of work, as I say, just to reflect that, you know, significant growth we see there, so that we are maximising our opportunities to manage down that growth. We have something we call the Continuous Improvement Programme, and this was an initiative started by our Transformation Unit colleagues, but basically it's about brainstorming across our service areas. What else can we do, given that we've been in the game of delivering services for over a decade now, you know, and we have to keep taking money out of the system. It's a whole new initiative at looking a whole raft of different ideas and things that we could do across our services. So there's a number of projects in highways. We started in the department looking at the highways function. Many of those, as you'll see, there's some examples there listed for you, are linked to digitisation and the greater use of technology in our services. Some might not come to fruition. However, I would reassure you that there is a whole list of ideas that, you know, we've still got waiting to come forward, that, you know, if some of them don't, we will look at other options as well. Each of those will be tested, though, you know, for a positive case for savings. So a whole raft of smaller things there that drives that savings line. Given the Council's overall financial position, in the department as a whole has been given an additional 3.5 million savings to deliver over the MTFS. That's above our existing 3.6 million allocation we had. Therefore, we have got a whole host of other initiatives under that category, savings under development. Paragraphs 19 to 26 give you a flavour of what they are, and you can see that there's some different themes there. There's a number that are around generating, or there's some that are around generating further income for us, such as looking at the potential to sell more, deliver more services for developers, you know, for which obviously we would charge. There's also looking to deliver more savings through that digitisation, the wider digitisation agenda, and we'll be focusing on the home to school transport aspect of the service. And there's also some, I'm sure you will have noted, that are around service reduction, things like grass cutting service, etc. All these proposals require further work to understand if A, they're deliverable, B, they will deliver savings, and C, then they're acceptable. So there's a whole number of hurdles we have to get through before they will materialise, or they could materialise into actual savings for us. But just to give you a flavour of what we in the department are looking at bringing forward for future savings. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Anne. Any comments from colleagues? Les?
Thank you, Chair. I know what I want to say, Anne, or I know the question I want, and it's a dilemma, so I'm not sure what the answer would be. So by default, with what my wife does, I'm familiar with the use of taxis for children with special educational needs. In another place, we are a licensing authority for taxis, and there is some concerns about the amount of taxis drivers who are not returning to service post-COVID. You've clearly detailed in this report the increasing cost of using taxis, and a suggestion that we could move some of the transport to fleet. So I'm just kind of curious, because you know there's a whole lot of conflicting aspects there. By default, a lot of the children that we are transporting, be they children, young children or early adults, are coming from here, there and everywhere. How would that manifest itself as a fleet solution? Hence, we've adopted using taxis historically because those children are coming from here, there and everywhere. So do you follow the drift? I'm just trying to understand the complexities of, because there's clear cost pressures there, and we know, well, it is, you know, the cost of taxis is going up and there's fewer taxis around. But how would that manifest itself as a fleet solution? If you don't mind, please, Anne.
It's always a balance. We do, just to be clear at the moment though, while the bulk of our roughly 2,500 people who are under we transport under the SEND transport are on taxis, we do have our own fleet as well. So we do, you know, provide SEN transport with our own vehicles and fleet. It is limited and it is challenging. Obviously, you've got to, people can be going to the same destination, the same setting, we're taking them there, but they've got to be within a reasonable radius, you know, of their origin, their home point, you know, because if not, people are in vehicles for too long. So there are certain cut-offs we will work to, whether it's acceptable to be able to have several people on a vehicle. The other thing is we have to take into account people's individual needs. Sometimes behavioural needs means they cannot be in a vehicle with anybody else and they have to be solo transport. So it's far more limited than, you know, with normal mainstream transport, etc. However, there are opportunities, and part of the reviews about the savings are about seeing if we can build on those opportunities. But the other aspect is, even if it was solo transport, looking at some of our most expensive ones of those, maybe because it's you know, we're going out of county to a specialist facility in a different county, etc., and it's a daily trip, so your mileage, we're looking at, is that better to bring it? Could we do it more efficiently, i.e. for less money, if we did it with our own vehicles rather than putting that to the market? So there's a couple of things. There's the thing about, yes, can we make more multiple use vehicles? And then can we take out maybe some of the more expensive solo taxis and do that ourselves under our own fleet?
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Les. Thank you, Anne. Have we concluded that item now? Moving on to agenda item 9. Sorry. Oh, sorry, I've missed that.
Getting ahead of yourself. I'll try and be brief. Other factors influencing our services, costs and our ability to deliver. It's worth highlighting because, you know, there are some different ones that are you know, been coming up over the last year or so. Resources and staffing, major issue for us at the moment. And Mr. Phillimore just a minute ago mentioned drivers, taxi drivers. We have the same with our own in-house fleet, be it for highways or be it for transport. Getting drivers is incredibly difficult, but it's not just drivers. We have it across the board. We have some real issues for recruitment and retention. We're taking a number of initiatives around that. Grow your own, career graded posts, more use of agency, external consultants. You know, we're doing everything we can to help plug the gap, but we're in a very difficult market, as I'm sure you'll have seen from national media as well. Another key challenge for us, and again has been mentioned earlier, are increased costs, inflation, and particularly construction inflation. So impact for, you know, some of our capital projects or all of our capital projects of the way the market is at the moment in terms of those. Another factor of the last year, or, you know, due to the pandemic, bus market viability. Patronage still between something like 50 and 60%. Government's support funding to the bus industry stops at the end of March at the moment, and it's highly likely we will see more bus service withdrawals, in which case, you know, the county council is then looked at to, you know, meet that gap. So significant potential funding issues for us there. In addition to the core budgets for highways and transport, I'll just point out to you, you know, we do get funding from a lot of other areas, and you'll see details of that in paragraph 32, a whole host of different areas. Happy to take questions on that if you want to, but I'll just leave it there.
Chair, if I may, and it's not a question, it's just a really positive observation, I think, because Anne mentioned the challenges of retention and recruitment. You know, there are now 1.2 million vacancies out there, so it's an extraordinary environment that we're in. But I've recently worked on a test and finish group looking at new ways of working, and I have to say, I was thoroughly impressed with the depth and the breadth that the officer team were working at, to actually not just what does the post-COVID world look like, but how do we take the staff of the team with us on that journey? So it's just an observation, Chair. Thank you.
Last section, capital. Right, our capital position for highways and transport's in table 3 for you. We've got a 4-year total programme of 221 million for across the highways and transport function. So, you know, a massive capital programme for us. And this coming year, we're anticipating spending 55 million of that. That capital programme doesn't cover just our major schemes, which I think is the automatic thing people think about, you know, like the Melton Mowbray Distributor Road, etc. It also covers our capital maintenance work, which we referred to earlier, advanced design programme, which enables us to do the early feasibility for schemes, and things like our vehicle replacement fund. You know, we've got a fleet of over 400 vehicles for the County Council we maintain and manage, and that includes that capital replacement there. Funding source for our capital spend is given in table 4, just to see where that comes from. As you see, a whole host of different areas, grants, etc. But just again, and I think we alluded to earlier, that the local transport plan funding from government is still provisional allocations. We're still waiting to hear the actual allocation from DFT yet. And details are in Appendix C. Thank you.
It's just over the just over what Anne was saying regarding the bus recovery grant from the government. We're currently, as a council, writing to all our MPs and the DFT over this, as it's a national problem, to see if we can get it extended.
Thank you very much. I'm looking at item 34 on table 4, not so much the table. There's a few capital items here, and large ones, obviously. There's Oxbridge. Just as a query on that. I mean, I know it's going to cost a lot of money and so on. Is it possible to have a toll bridge these days, or is that back in the 19th century? I'll ask a more serious question as well, then you can decide which ones merit an answer. We've got advanced design programs just above table 4, and then below that in table paragraph 35, the integrated transport schemes, which is usually lots of different improvements and so on, of a minor variety. You say that the resource will also be used to fund advanced design and feasibility studies to ensure. Is that for the A511, or is that for other large projects? In which case, why is it coming out of integrated transport schemes? That's where I am with that one. That's all I had to.
It is for a whole host of initiatives, you know, the large projects as well as early work on cycling, walking, etc. So, you know, it does cover a whole host of initiatives out of that one. In terms of tolling, I think I previously worked in Kent, and there was views about, you know, the new Lower Thames crossing and the tolling on that. My understanding is you have to have specific legislation to allow you to do that. You can't just do it as a matter of course. But I don't think to date we've wanted to particularly put that forward as an option unless members instruct otherwise.
Thank you, Chairman. I think for many generations, Melton Mowbray has been looking to have the distributed road put in place. So we're nearly there, nearly spade in the ground time. Sometimes it's the devil in the detail, and the detail may well be in there, but there's a question about the on costs of restricting traffic and traffic management within Melton, because anybody that knows the area and once the distributed road is in place, those drivers who will know it's probably quicker to go through town rather than go around the ring road. So we're probably going to need some expenditure to restrict larger vehicles and traffic management within the town. It's just a question to see whether that has been included in the overall cost or whether the cost is just for the distributed road. Thank you, Anne.
There is an element of the costing that includes the basics of signing, etc. You know, whole new signing strategy, because you want to sign your traffic to go round the, you know, new distributor road and not through the town centre the way it does at the moment. So there's an element of the basics. However, it's envisaged that more would want to be done and need to be done, and that would be under the wider Melton Mowbray transport strategy that we have.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just coming again to paragraph 38, please, Anne. I know that there's National Productivity Infrastructure Fund, which has been made available for Hinckley junctions. I was just wondering if you could tell me which ones and how much, please. Thank you.
I certainly can. It's the Rugby Road, and is it the Brookside Road? Mr. Bill could probably get the name of the road right. 2 junctions. It's right beside Hinckley, the hub in Hinckley. Those 2 junctions there, and it's for capacity improvements there and cycling and walking improvements as well. And the funding, it's roughly a £5 million project, and the National Productivity Infrastructure Fund we bid for a number of years ago and got was 3.5 million, and the rest is coming out of developer contributions and match funding.
Thanks, Anne. Do we know roughly when that's going to be undertaken, or is that to be confirmed?
It will be this year. We've had a slight delay because we've had difficulties getting land for the compound. However, we're working closely with colleagues at Hinckley and Bosworth Borough Council, and we're hoping that will be we'll have successfully found somewhere in February, and I think works are due to start in April.
Thank you, Anne. I do apologise for trying to cut short your presentation, but if we can now safely move on, I take it. So we're moving on to item 9 of the agenda, progress review on the flooding scrutiny review panel. That's on page 27. The purpose of this report is to update the committee on the progress made and work undertaken towards the approved recommendations of the January 2021 Scrutiny Review Panel report. So I'm going to ask Ozzy, Anne, but I believe Jana's coming into this one to introduce the report. Ozzy?
Thank you, Chair. I'll hand over to Anne to go through the report, and I know that Jana has got a large input into it as well.
Afternoon, Jana.
Afternoon, Chair. Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Fine.
Brilliant. Thank you. Still getting used to beaming in live, I'm afraid. So thank you very much, Chair, for this report. As you said, its purpose really is to provide an update and feedback to members. And I think it's really positive, actually, an example of officers working with the scrutiny panel to look at areas of concern, identify some recommendations and implement those. So I would say there's lots of work gone on in this area, and hopefully as you look through the report, you'll see the progress that's been happening. So as you said, this followed on from a scrutiny panel review that the report kind of concluded in January 2021. And one of those requirements following that was that we came back with an annual update. So very much the report focused on our duties as a lead local flood authority, also our role in resilience and planning, and also then our duties under the Highways Act in terms of maintaining highway drainage and things. So quite a big scope of the report, and you'll see there were 25 recommendations, I think, that came out, which we have been working through. So you'll see as you move through the report that there was a panel considered all of those duties and came back with several recommendations, and the report itself sets out, there's an appendix with all of the recommendations in, setting out the progress, and there's some key ones there that I think members and communities will be really pleased to see. So first of all is that the local flood risk management strategy, we always got jazzy names for things in local government, haven't we, is being refreshed. And I think part of the recommendation, the discussion that was had between officers and members was very much about making that more interactive, more accessible, and much clearer about roles and responsibilities of the authority in this area. And that work's underway, and we hope that will be out to consultation in the summer and autumn this year. We always put that caveat on because obviously the flood risk team are very much at risk of being diverted onto flood risk issues. So if we did have a turn of weather or issues that came out, we'd obviously prioritise those. But the schedule is happening and that work is ongoing at the moment. I think another key recommendation from the report, just like to sort of draw your attention to, was very much around that this area of work involves a lot of collaboration across multiple agencies, and the sort of themes that the panel were interested in were certainly around accountability, engagement between those authorities and the public, and the effectiveness of those setups. And one of the things we've done around addressing some of those concerns was reigniting the Flood Risk Management Board. And that those meetings are underway. And I think it's fair to say we might have even been really positively surprised about the level of engagement in that and the attendance and the discussion that's been had around that. A joint communications plan is being drafted on behalf of that board. And I think, again, that will help draw together some of the concerns about who does what and what are these, can the messages be clear, whichever organisation that you speak to. We've also clarified that the lead local flood authority, so ourselves included, will be the lead organisation for recovery cells, in the event of an emergency situation, and that's set up through sort of what we call the TCG, Tactical Coordination Group, and Strategic Coordination Groups that the Resilience Partnership has there. So again, I think some of that clarity that we're looking for has been sorted out there. And I think, again, around the Section 9, we call them Section 19 reports. So in the event of a flood event that meets certain criteria, our team will investigate that and make recommendations as to, various responsibilities, whether it's ourselves as lead local flood authority, whether it's riparian owners who've got a responsibility to maintain flood infrastructure and water infrastructure, to firm up those reports, make the actions clearer, and also include timescales, and so that they're all ongoing. I think were key recommendations of the panel. just moving through the report, and again, I'm sorry, I won't read it all out to you, but just to sort of highlight in there that there's 12 complete actions that have kind of been adopted into business as usual already, and the others are all ongoing, are in progress. And there's a summary table in there to kind of highlight that out. And I think the kind of thematic table in there at just under paragraph 10 kind of helps give an idea for people of what type of things we're concerned about this area of work for us. So again, I think the panel would be pleased to know, and members as well, that actually since the panel happened, we've had a really successful kind of round of recruitment, and the team is well resourced at the moment, and a number of experienced people in there. But those people are in high demand, and we've seen a bit of that. So again, I think my colleagues would be keen for me just to caveat that and not to be too I wouldn't, too smug or confident about that. It's something that we shouldn't take for granted with the other resource implications that perhaps Anne was discussing in the report just prior. But at the moment, some good work has been done, and that those teams are well set up. So then you'll just see in the conclusion section, couple of points there, Chair, if it's okay. The recommendation of the panel was that we come back to you annually with a report on this. Progress against the recommendations, and I suspect also a bit of an update on the general sort of how things are lying in this area of work, what the challenges are, and whether the sort of the benefits of that collaborative working are being seen longer term. And there was just a question there in the report about whether you wanted to continue that, whether annual is right for that approach, and then also any comments on progress from this committee as well. So if that's okay, Chair, I'll hand back to you there, unless there's anything in particular you wanted me to pick up.
Thank you, Jenna. I'm sure we'll come back to you shortly, but before I move on to colleagues, I'd just like to ask Anne if anything you'd like to add, Anne. No, okay. So colleagues, any comments, questions? You're happy for this to be an annual report? As Jana said. I'll take Ozzy first, then you, David.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to thank the officers for the work that they've done on this, and I've worked closely with the flood team over the last 2 or 3 years before I became lead member, and I know the dedication that those officers put into the work. So it's my thanks to the officers for the work they've done, and for Scrutiny for the work that they've also done on this.
Thank you, Ozzy. I'm sure they do a fantastic job, as you quite rightly said, so thank you to the team. David.
Thank you, Chairman. I think actually Richard might be closer to this than I am, but about a week ago, we had the pleasure of tramping over one of our sites in Hinckley, where, how can I put it, it was rather marshy. And it had to be seen to be believed. And there is a general feeling in the Hinckley, Earlshilton, Elmsthorpe area, if you like, that there is something going wrong with the underlying ground conditions, with the rising water level, which is affecting various sites to the embarrassment of ourselves, because we've but I don't want to go into that. But we do seem to have a problem in that area, and we suggested this morning that perhaps we should ask Jana to contact the Environment Agency to see whether there could be an investigation into what is happening. But I'll defer to Richard because I know he's closer to it than I am.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yep, Councillor Bill's referring to Crematorium Development, which unfortunately is subject to significant amounts of water and flooding. So we might be able to do burials at sea, or possibly even Viking funerals. But all joking apart, there seems to be potentially an issue with either unknown, unmapped or unidentified springs, certainly in our area and presumably elsewhere, which are causing problems on developments when these water sources are coming to light and actually affecting, in our case, quite a significant project. So I don't know if that's a problem which lies with the County Council or potentially with the Environment Agency, but from my past experience, found actually trying to get information from the EA occasionally a challenge. So I'd just be interested in your comments on that one. Thank you.
Jana, can you add anything to that?
Yeah, of course. Thanks for that. I think possibly it's worth me having a little bit of a look at the detail you've got there sort of offline from here. But in general terms, yeah, it would depend on the watercourse in question, who the responsible agency was. And I think part of your concern there and your experience is why that board has been reset up. So I think it would be good for us to use those avenues to kind of explore that. And if there is information that we need from partners such as the Environment Agency, I'm happy to pick that up there. I think just in terms of the site that you've mentioned there, I'm familiar with the sort of process went through, and obviously there is flood mitigation certainly proposed as part of those works, I think, in terms of balancing ponds. So again, those sites are assessed, but if there are unmapped perhaps pressures on there that we don't know about, if the evidence of that is there, that's something we can pick up and move on. So I think we've perhaps got a way in an avenue and a new baseline for kind of liaising with colleagues, and I'll be happy to pick up those points and test them through that avenue if that's okay with yourself and you, Chair.
I'm happy with that. Jana, Richard?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Perhaps if
fine.
I'd include my colleague on that one. If I can, Chair, I've got just a quick question myself. So item W, which is the flood wardens, that seems like a very good initiative. Could information about that be sent around to all the various local authorities and parish and town councils, so we can maybe try and round up a few more volunteers and victims? Certainly in Old Shilton, we've got the somewhat infamous Watery Gate just outside, and every year the local farmers earn a few quid towing people out that have thought it doesn't look that deep and found out to the cost actually it is quite deep. Thank you.
Is it okay just to quickly comment on that, Chair? Yeah, just to say, yeah, absolutely, we can recirculate information and the group can. I think as well, we did have a discussion internally about which mechanisms we communicate by now. I think traditionally local government organisations and similar perhaps haven't embraced social media in the way that we are doing now, and there are opportunities to do that, so we'll do that as well, but certainly no problem to circulate the information.
Thank you, Richard, for your question. Thank you, Jana. But stay there, Jana, we've got another question for you. Les? No,
it's just a response. I just happen to know from a parish council that parish councils were notified. They are looking for, it went out, I think, in December. So your local parish councils should have it.
But being a town councillor, I'll give the clerk a kick. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Les. I don't think there's any more questions, but we are asked if we require this report to be annually, as Jana said earlier. Is it the wish of Les?
I think, for me, Chair and officers, I think actually it's probably more important now than it's ever been because of the change to the climate that we have, and the points that's just been raised with my colleagues. Within my division, we have a huge public open space, which principally is a mega flood zone. But Jana will know, 20, lose track with COVID, is either, I think it was 29 winters of 2019 and 2020, the average rainfall was nearly double the average rainfall previously. So it's inevitable that the aquifers are absolutely full. And so water just has nowhere to go at the moment. It just can't sink down. But Jana is the expert. But certainly, I think because of the challenges of climate change and the impacts of climate, seeing this month yearly would be worthwhile, I would humbly suggest.
Thank you, Les. So, Jana, I believe you have your answer there, so it'd be annually, if that's okay.
That's great, thank you, Chair.
Yeah, so thank you for your presentation and the excellent report, Jana. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We move it.
Thank you. This report updates in the first year of the Members Highway Fund and sets out proposals for next year's Members Highway Fund and how we might want to deliver the scheme in 22-23. Committee will be well aware. We had 1.4 million additional funding made available over and above our base highways and transport budgets for the Members Highway Fund, and this in effect gave each member 25,000 to deliver highway improvements in their own areas. We have received, the report does say we've received over 400. Now it is over 470. We've got the latest applications from our 55 councillors, and roughly about 500,000 has been committed. There's still a lot in train being discussed, but about 500,000 of that has been committed. We've had a wide variety of requests. The most popular have been speed related. I'm sure that's not a surprise to you. Particularly the VAS, the vehicle activated signs and the village gateway features. And then second most popular was our street furniture related, benches, bollards, etc., that type of thing. The process that we put in place was, when we got a request from a member, we do an initial assessment of it, and there's kind of 3 key tests for us. Is it allowable on the highway? There's some things that are just, unsafe to have on the highway. We just couldn't allow, and it's against regulation, etc., etc. Does it fall within the budget, i.e. is it affordable in the 25,000? Because, to be fair, most people don't know what highway interventions cost, and many things are more expensive than people would anticipate. So, is it affordable? And the third element of that test was, is it covered by our own business as usual? In which case we would transfer that request into that rather than the member paying for it out the member highway fund. We have declined round about 100, I suspect that number is increasing, however, round about 100 requests because they didn't meet those 3 tests or because the member has withdrawn it. What we've found, a number of members have put in considerable numbers of requests, say between 20 and 30 per member. Now, obviously, they're not going to be able to afford all those, and then they're deciding, getting the information about how much it costs, etc., and some of the requirements around it, and deciding which ones they want to take forward and withdrawing those other ones. So it's been quite an iterative process, we appreciate. We did set up a member panel to help oversee this. Bear in mind, it's the first time the authorities delivered this kind of initiative, so new for you as members and new for us in terms of delivering it for you. And that member panel has been particularly helpful in overseeing the process, shaping our communications and the information we give out on it, as well as testing some of the more unusual requests we've had in, and just that double check, are we getting it right? We're supporting this or we're declining it, etc. So it's been really, really helpful, certainly from the officer's point of view, in guiding and shaping our member highway fund process. We this year, because it was a new initiative and the decision to implement wasn't taken until a couple of months into the new financial year, in reality it meant that members didn't have an opportunity to really talk with their communities until September, after the summer break. So to be fair, we've really been on the back foot in terms of delivery, and it's very much, back-ended in the financial year. So we've had a challenge this year on it. And members understand that, I'm sure. We want to be in a better position next financial year, and we should be in a better position. So, we're not in the same, there's so much at the back end of the financial year. Just to give reassurance, however, we have got agreement for our finance colleagues that unspent members highway fund from this financial year can be carried forward into the new financial year because some of those challenges. We might get to a position we agree and the member knows what they want to spend the money on, but because we have to book traffic management, etc., it can't be delivered in the financial year. It's not a problem. We'll still do it, and you'll still get your funding for that. Moving on to looking at, we've learned a lot in putting this in place and delivering it. So what we aim to do is take that learning and improve the system for next financial year. So what we're actually proposing is there will be a menu of options that members can pick from. So it's less of a blank sheet, And and some communities I know have loads of ideas and some don't really have any that are coming forward, and that's difficult for a member as well. So what we hope to do, or what we aim to do, is put forward a menu of options, and there's 5 key things in that. First one is you could choose your mobile vehicle activated sign or your static vehicle activated sign, including all the consultation and the licensing and everything around that. We could sort that for you. That could be tick 1. I could do that with your member highway fund. You could pay for a year's support of moving your mobile vehicle activated sign. A lot of communities want them, but actually don't have the resource to move them around the community. And they do need a lot of attention because the batteries need changed regularly, etc., etc. And they are more effective if they can be moved around rather than drivers getting used to them in one location for a long period of time. So we can provide that resource for you for a year for a fixed fee. Structural testing of lighting columns, that's always a frequent one for us. We're asked to do that for communities, for hanging baskets or Christmas decorations, etc. Package of maintenance work. So we give you a fixed fee, minimum 5,000, and you could pick, vegetation, lining, improvements in an area, a whole host of different maintenance things you could pick, and we, for a fixed sum, and we go and sort that for you. And the last one is the one that's more bespoke. So a kind of single location package. If you want for a village or a community to do, a specific scheme with that, we'll work with you on that. So that's where you've got an element of greater flexibility to do different things within your community. The objective is to stop the 30 applications from a member, of which 25 don't get taken forward, but we've done all the work on them because, to be fair, we just don't have the resource to do that. And I'm sure you don't have the time as well to have all those conversations with your communities. So it really is about making it more streamlined and more effective for both the members and for the delivery side of it, and reduce any abortive work in deciding what needs to be delivered. We also again, to make sure it's happening much earlier in the year, we propose to hold surgeries with members in May to talk them through all that and discuss early thoughts. There'll be an online application process, and we're aiming for the first shot at that, first pass by the end of May. And follow-up meetings then, and particularly around those more bespoke schemes that, if you're opting to go down that way. And that actually means we can get on the front foot and start delivery from July onwards and have a really good shot at delivering within the financial year for you. Basically, that, as I say, is where we want to go with it. Really happy to get committees' views and response to that.
Thank you, Anne. As I said this morning, I suppose we've all learned a lot over the last 12 months with the scheme, but it sounds encouraging what you've got for the next one. So thank you for that report. Colleagues, Les?
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a brilliant scheme. As of tomorrow morning, I'm meeting all the 4 parishes within my division to actually fine tune and finalise exactly what it is. I absolutely get the menu opportunity, and I think we should all be conscious of the amount of work that officers have done behind the scenes to try and process all these weird and wonderful applications that we've put forward when we're still in difficult times, and there's still lots of legacy pressures. I think it's a brilliant scheme. I think it's allowed us as elected representatives to work very closely with our parishes and residents, which is a completely new dynamic, I think, to actually go into those environments and say, I've got a few quid. How can we help? Now, certainly in my patch, common theme, speeding and safety around skills. Very happy that all mine qualified. And whether the parishes part fund to get them all through, we'll work on that tomorrow. But I genuinely think it's a brilliant scheme, and I think it is good. I think the residents in the parishes are all grateful for it. The one cautionary note I've got, though, Anne, is the timetable for 22-23, 27 May. That's quite early when we're still working on the schemes that we haven't brought forward this year. So that's my only cautionary note, is just that timeline's perhaps a bit tight, and we've still got to be conscious we're still in a pandemic. We're not out of the woods yet, and I just would have a little bit of caution around that date. But back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Les. I share your views on that as well. Anne, would you like to answer before Craig comes in?
No, very much. Thank you. Appreciate those comments. And on that end of May, I mean, I'll definitely talk to the team about maybe we can have a couple of, filters about, a May one, a June one, etc. I wouldn't want to stop the ones where members know what they want to do, come in and do it so we can get it going. And so it's a drip. What's really difficult is everything comes in at once. And if it all comes in at the back end, we're on a losing battle to try and get it in for you in the financial year. So maybe it's a case of we just have a bit of a tiered system on that.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just echo what my colleague almost said there. It's obviously a brand new initiative, and you've done remarkably well in the department as well. It was new to everybody. A lot of people had sceptical views of it. Some people with 30 odd parishes within the council. I'm quite lucky to have 2 and then 1 unparished. But as a new member, I found it particularly useful to get to know my parish councils. At times I have felt like a bird bringing worms back to the nest and having all these chicks jeffing at me. Can we have this? Can we have that? A couple of million would be better for some of the ideas that they had, but no, it's been a really useful project for us, and we've had some really good ideas, and I'm glad to see it's carried over to next year. Thank you.
No, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to thank the officers for the work they've done on it. We've not had any new officers or any new staff in that department. So we've utilised the staff that we have, and they've worked very hard trying to do both that work and their normal day-to-day jobs. So, all credit to the team that have been working hard there. Louise Bennett being one, and Sudan the other. They're just 2 names that I'll mention. There are more officers. It is a good scheme, but what I would like to remind all councillors really is that have a good think about what you're putting in before you put it in, because it does take a lot of time. Officers look at every single one, and when you're getting 18 to 30 from some members, just think about what you're going to put in first. Is it viable? You must know that if you want to tarmac a pavement, that is nowhere near going to come to £25,000. You're going to get nothing for it. If you're looking at the smaller things like the VAS, the signs, if you want to drop curb or things of that nature, yes, they're all doable. But we've had some real strange requests. One of them was to sort out a pond in a park. So, but officers have looked at everything. And so my plea to members is to really think hard about what you're going to put in. And I know, and I do appreciate some councillors have got probably God knows how many, 80 or 15 parishes or whatever, especially if you're in the rural areas. I mean, I'm very blessed to have just 2, so I'm very lucky. But what I would say, I do appreciate that those members that do have lots of parishes and have lots of, things to come forward. But just have a good think about what you're putting in first, because the officers are doing a grand job, and with no extra resources at the present time.
I definitely get the point that it's an excellent way of communicating with parishes and residents groups and so on. I mean, there are other ways of doing that, and one of them is to go and talk to them about what they want first, rather than to give them money. I have a grandson who comes and stays from time to time, and he always likes to go out to the shops, and he has £10 to spend. The one he likes is a sporty lad, and the one he likes to go into is Sports Direct. And we spent about 10 minutes looking at all the kits for Manchester United kits. Is what he wanted. He's got it all anyway, so what else could he have? And he said, I said, we've got to go now. Albert, that's his name. Is there anything you want? And he looked around and he says, I'll have a football. And I said, well, you've got 2 footballs at home. You've got football at our house. Why do you want another football? I suppose so. Point being, you've got the point anyway, don't you? If you start off, you give everybody £25,000, they're going to spend it. And I would rather this to be a scheme which was demand-led rather than the supply of cash, so that we really get an idea of what's important to communities. And we use the criteria that the department already has, improve them if they need improving, to say, right, and I'll just take the example of a zebra crossing because nobody's asked for one of those for some reason or other. Is this zebra crossing meeting the criteria for one? Are there enough people crossing the road here? Is there enough traffic that's making that inconvenient? You start from that point and not from the point of view of, well, it's you say we've got £25,000. Actually, it's taxpayers' money we've got, that £25,000. It's not free money. Rather than going and saying, well, what you're going to spend it on, like my grandson, who's only 10, so he can't help it. So that's the first point I wanted to make, because I do think it's fundamentally flawed, the system. At the moment, we spend 166,000, just 166,000 on our core budget for these facilities that we're now going to spend 1.5 million on. So we're either going to get a lot more or it's going to cost us a lot more doing it, because there's a staff implication on this which doesn't exist with our core budget. And if we're doing a lot more, are all these VAS systems really going to be ultimately effective? Now, you know, everybody can look at a VAS system and say, oh, well, it's clearly effective because it's banging up the speed that the vehicle's doing and so on. And there is a feeling that anything is better than nothing. But we have criteria for those, and none of the applications for VAS systems has met those criteria. Admit the criteria are that you've got to have, you know, a certain number of incidents to merit a VAS system. But none of the applications that have been made for VAS systems meet the current criteria that the county council has. So I feel pretty strongly about this, and I understand why people like it, because it feels empowerment, but from a strategic point of view, it's a very poor way of distributing the money that we've got, which is going down all the time. Or, you know, as Anne said when she opened remarks about road maintenance. I just add that there's a lot of room for improvement in this, even if you're going to keep it, which I hope you don't. I guess we will, because, you know, Ozzy's in charge here and he's made the decision. I understand that. But we do need to know, as well as a price list, we need to know what the criteria are, or what's important when we're asking for these things. You know, if we want a VAS system, what's important? Oh, well, it's actually the speed of vehicles. Are vehicles exceeding the speed limit? Well, maybe they're not. I mean, in my area, we've got a street which everybody complains about, but they're not exceeding the speed limit, partly because they're making too much noise. But and is there a point in putting up a VAS system if the vehicles aren't exceeding the speed limit by and large? No, there isn't, because they've just confirmed that they're doing okay when they go through at 30 miles an hour, or whatever it is. So I think we need a list of the criteria as well as the list of the prices. And some of the prices are exceptionally variable. And I just want to use this particular example. Incidentally, the goodie bag that I've ordered could have been supplied by any parish council, but we don't have a parish council, so we've never had the bus shelters or the bollards or, you know, the seating and so on. So that's what I've currently got. And next year I'll order some. I might order a VAS system because everybody will want me to. But I've asked for 2 bus shelters. Now you think, well, 2 bus shelters should easily come within £20,000. The first one cost £20,000. The first one cost £10,000 to buy and site. It's an ordinary cantilevered bus shelter. The second one cost £15,000. 50% increase on the first. something to do with it needs a bit more tarmac to stand on, something like that. So when we're talking about prices, they can be exceptionally variable. And by the way, I think £15,000 for one bus shelter is horrendous. But there's no way of us challenging that. If we got a contractor in to do it, we could say, you know, I'm not going to pay 15,000 for that. I'll give you 12,000, whatever is reasonable. But we have no way of negotiating what we think might be an excessive charge. But it's a very, very staff-intensive system. I've been going backwards and forwards over a few bollards. I mean, I'm tremendously appreciative of the staff who've been doing it, and no, as Ozzy says, no criticism of them at all. In fact, we're very grateful. But the system that's been invented needs a lot of improving. Sorry, I've gone a bit, but I hope I've made sense.
I nearly stopped you there, but thank you for that. But I think Anne's answered a lot of your questions previously. We agree, I'm sure Ozzy and Anne will agree, there's been teething problems with the scheme, but that's been addressed now, and hopefully the next scheme will be simpler. Going back to your point about prices, I'm sure I've seen prices included on the sheet circulated to members, but I do take the point. I do also take the point from Craig and Les about how good the scheme is. You talk about vehicle activated signs. Whittick can't get enough of them. They love it. Well, our parish council do. So, you know, it's contrary to what you need, but it's what I need, you know, and I think the system is absolutely brilliant for rural communities. But, and I don't really want to add anything to that, and then I'll come to you, Ozzy.
Thank you. I would just thank you, Chair. Just on the pricing element, a couple of things. Firstly, the variability of the costs. And, you know, I know, Max, that you said, you know, the 15,000 was, you know, more because it needed a wee bit more tarmac. Chances are a wee bit more tarmac means new curbing, shifting the drains, etc., etc. So sometimes that's the reality of the situation in terms of variability, because one bit of the highway isn't always, you know, directly comparable to another bit. And in terms of the actual cost and challenge, I mean, I think, you know, we welcome that. They're fundamentally the costs that we have to pay to do it, either by buying those bus shelters, by getting our gangs to do the work, etc. That's what we have to pay for it. If there's now, not in things like bus shelters, but in some of the smaller items, we've had members who have said, I want this done, but, you know, I know I can get it done over here at a certain price. Can we do that? And absolutely open to that conversation if there's a way. We've got various frameworks we have to go through, etc., and we'll have certain rates we have to pay. Sometimes there are other ways to do it that a small community could do, etc. We're always open to that. But the price is quoted, and I absolutely understand your perspective. 15,000 seems excessive for one bus shelter. The reality is that's what we have to pay.
Yeah, just quickly, Chair. I mean, when we're talking about VAS signs and for speeding, etc., you know, we should be looking at having a speed survey done before we have the actual VAS signs. And I certainly, for the ones that I'm supporting in my ward, have arranged that, had that done. And it's not only speeding that you can have VAS signs for, because I've got a particular crossing in the village of Ratby that it comes around on a bad bend, and it's not so much the actual speed. If you're going 30, you're going too much, because you're coming around on the bad bend onto a zebra crossing. So what I've had created is a VAS sign, but it's a flashing sign, and it shows you the children walking across the road. As you're approaching it, it highlights that there is a crossing in front of you. And that type of VAS sign, you know, is required, not for speeding, but for that particular crossing. So I would suggest that what we do, when we have speeding problems, we look at having a speeding assessment done to see what the road speed is, and then we look towards the VAS signs. It's no use putting a VAS sign on a road that's doing 20 miles an hour.
Thank you, Chair. I do think I feel I need to comment here. I kind of understand what Mr. Hunt's saying, but surely it's down to us as divisional members and representatives to work with our people, work with our residents, work with our parishes, work with our district council colleagues to understand what is important to the people criteria, not the legislation or the piece of regulatory or monitoring control that we have. And I absolutely go with Ozzy here. You know, across my patch, we've had the police out numerous times on speed surveys. We've had 4 highway surveys done on pneumatic strips. And the problem with pneumatic strips is people see them and they slow down. You know, so there is a quirk. And the 20-mile-an-hour point that Ozzy's just made, I think is really important. So Kilby's in my patch, it's got a 20-mile-an-hour limit. And the average is from the speed survey, say there isn't a problem. But if you actually look on the top end, on the right-hand side, about the amount of people who are, it's the ACPO criteria, isn't it? How many? Yeah. Actually, there are people whizzing through that village at 60 and 70 and 80 miles an hour, even though it says 20. So if I can put with my residents and with my parishes a mobile vehicle activated sign that at least stops some of them running through that village at 60, 70 and 80 miles an hour, I will be a very happy divisional representative. My parish council would be very happy. And more importantly, the people charter should be even happier. It's their money we're spending, and actually satisfying the people's requirements, because, you know, Annie's the expert, it's her department. It is absolutely impossible for us as a highway authority to satisfy every single highway request. We just can't do it, can we? It's just a crazy amounts of money. So if we can take £25,000 each and deliver some solutions, yes, I absolutely agree. We should be doing the work behind the scenes with the police and the highway authorities to get the survey results in. But I've also got Billy and Benji bollards going in, hopefully on the primary school, which is just a parking nightmare. We've had county enforcement officers down there. We've had the police down there numerous times. I'm satisfied as a divisional ward representative. The requests I have put in are viable. They are measured. They are backed with as much evidence as I can gather. And the People's Charter will be very happy with the investment that we're making in their villages with their money. That's my position. I do agree with you, Max. I think, you know, that need to understand why and what should be backed up with the evidence and the background work. But for me, it's down to us to do the legwork to understand what our people want. So back to you, Chair. Sorry, rant over.
No, much appreciated, Phil. Thank you, Les. Sorry. Anne, thank you for the update. And I'm sure this committee would like to pass on our thanks to you, officers and staff, for helping us, members, with this scheme. And we look forward to embracing it again next year. And I think we also ought to add some thanks to Ozzy and our cabinet for making funds available. So thank you, Ozzy. So